This video was brought to you by my loyal patrons. Pledge today and receive exclusive perks. Link in the description.
Dear Christopher, here is your friend Thomas the Tank Engine. He wanted to come out of his station yard and see the world. These stories tell you how he did it.
Oh boy, here we are. We've made it, folks. The CGI series of Thomas. We are officially halfway through the whole show now. 12 seasons of Model Thomas, 12 seasons of CGI. An even split. The CGI series of Thomas is so funny. It has had the rockiest sprint. It started out pretty bad, then it got really good really quickly, and then it got really bad again really quickly. A lot of peaks and valleys, many highs and many lows. It'll be interesting to go back and revisit where it all began, see what changed and what stayed consistent. So let's dive on in and talk about how we got to this point. In 2007, Hit Entertainment made the decision to start transitioning the world of Thomas into full CGI. Last season saw the first steps into this new medium, still using a mostly model production, but with CGI used to animate the characters' faces and people. Hit Entertainment had decided to work with Canadian animation studio Nitrogen Studios for the animation of Season 12, with Dino Atanasiou of Stardust Pictures directing. I want to amend a little mistake that I made in the Season 12 video. It was never really a Hit was torn between Stardust and Nitrogen thing that I sort of made it out to be. What actually happened was Dino recommended Nitrogen to Hit, as he had worked with the studio before. The plan was always going to be Nitrogen would do the animation, and Dino would direct it. Dino was only on board for the process of directing the CGI animation onto the model footage, and with Hit's abrupt move into full CGI animation sooner than anticipated, Nitrogen took on all animation responsibilities in-house, and Dino left the series. The show's director became Greg Tiernan, the co-founder and then head of Nitrogen Studios. Greg Tiernan is a big fan of Thomas and the Railway series. He stated in an interview with SIF that his favorite characters were Diesel and the Skarloey engines. He has a passion for history and found books such as Very Old Engines and Duke the Lost Engine to be the most interesting to him. I can't say I blame him there. He also stated that when it came to creating new characters, the Nitrogen team would use as much reference material as possible, and sometimes even travel to railways in the UK to see the prototypes in person. Very commendable efforts on Nitrogen's part, and the passion for the series' roots and authenticity to real life was certainly there. Greg Tiernan and Nitrogen would unfortunately fall into some rocky controversy after their time on Thomas, but we will save that tale for another time down the road. Now, we are all aware that Thomas was meant to stay in the Season 12 hybrid style for at least a couple seasons originally, and the plan was cut short sooner than expected. The decision to move the show into full CGI was for two reasons. One, mostly to cut costs, as filming with and maintaining models was proving to be too expensive. And two, to modernize the series a bit and add some flexibility into the storytelling. CGI allowed the characters' faces to move now, allowing for more expression. The humans could be more involved in plots, and now they weren't limited with where the camera could be placed. With fully emotive characters now, they also took a greater step forward and brought in a full voice cast. For the first time since Thomas and the Magic Railroad, Thomas now had his own voice that wasn't the narrator's.
Your fans are going to get to hear you speak in your own voice for the very first time. How do you feel about that?
Bubbling boilers! Every useful engine has their own story to tell. Now the stories will make your firebox fizz!
Pre-production started in June 2008, with Hero of the Rails beginning production in September, only a mere year before it would release. The movie and season were worked on side by side. All of the show props were sent to Nitrogen Studios' main office in Vancouver, Canada, where they were used as reference when building their CG models. During Nitrogen's stint, all the props were left on display in their studio, as can be seen in these photos. All character models were built in Maya. Engine's paintwork textures were all designed in Photoshop, and then imported onto the models. Since Nitrogen was on such a time crunch, only a handful of sets and characters were built for this season, including the 8 main cast members, Rosie, Mavis, Diesel, Spencer, Annie and Clarabelle, Henrietta, Rocky, Birdie, Cranky, the 4 new characters, and Harold and Trevor, the latter 2 only appearing in the show's intro this year. More characters and sets would be built and returned to the show in following seasons. A whole voice cast was brought on, and keeping with the tradition of having a separate UK and US dub, an entire cast was hired for each. On the UK side, Ben Small took on Thomas and Toby. Keith Wickham took on the most roles with Edward, Henry, Gordon, James, Percy, and the Fat Controller. Teresa Gallagher voiced Emily, Mavis, Rosie, and Lady Hat. And Matt Wilkinson took on Cranky, Spencer, Charlie, Rocky, Victor, and Kevin. On the US side, Martin Sherman took on Thomas and Percy. Carrie Shale took on Henry, Gordon, James, Sir Topham, and Kevin. William Hope took on Edward, Toby, and Rocky. Glenn Rage took on Spencer, Cranky, and Charlie. Jules DeYoung took on Emily, Mavis, Rosie, and Lady Hat. And David Bedella voiced Victor. There were a couple cast members that appeared in both dubs. Carrie Shale, who was mostly a US dub actor, surprisingly voiced Diesel in the UK dub. Keith Wickham voiced Dowager Hat in both, and Togo Igawa voiced Hero in both. There will be a ton more crossover as the show goes on, and the dubs started sharing many of the same voice actors. Michael Angelis and Michael Brandon stuck around too, but this time only as narrators. Brandon was allowed to voice 2 characters though, and that was Diesel and everyone's other favorite character, Mr. Bubbles the Clown.
Hello, Thomas!
Who'd he go on to voice until season 16, when he left the show completely. Moving forward, for some reason, the US dub was treated as the official one, and was the one that was recorded first. All the animation was synced to their voice lines, as evident here in this production progress reel from Hero of the Rails.
His pistons pumped and his boiler bubbled.
Well done, Hero!
Thank you, Thomas!
Once the animation was complete, the UK dub actors would come in and record their lines, having the rather difficult task of matching their deliveries to the pre-existing animation. It's not really that noticeable unless you're really looking for it, but sometimes not every line matches the lips perfectly.
Don't you think so, boss? Thomas? Don't you think so, boss? Thomas?
They would go in and alter the animation whenever a character said a different term from the US dub, such as the Fat Controller instead of Sir Topham Hatt.
I know. I'll go and get Sir Topham Hatt. Sir Topham Hatt runs our railway now.
I know. I'll go and get the Fat Controller. The Fat Controller runs our railway now.
This season saw the most change to Thomas ever in a single year. From the full CGI animation to a full voice cast to a completely new production team, Thomas was now in a very different place than it was only a few years prior. Needless to say, a lot of fans were put off by this new Thomas, deeming it just far too different to be considered the same show. But at the same time, the start of this new era was kind of exciting. It was all new territory, seeing and hearing Thomas in this completely new way that was, by all accounts, still faithful to the rules of its universe. The start of a brave new world. CGI Thomas was here. So, how did things kick off? This new era of CGI Thomas kicked off with the 2009 movie Hero of the Rails. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't like me using footage from this movie. It blocked every attempt I made at re-editing this video. So I'm going to have to pixelate the screen for this whole section. Sorry folks. Thanks YouTube, you are great. Now I've talked about this movie quite a few times now. In my movie ranking video from ages ago, in Heroes Sodor's Finest video, and a couple others. And after this latest rewatch, I still have to say that my opinion has not really changed that much. I still think it's pretty solid. It's not great, mind you, it has a lot of problems that I will discuss, but it's solid. For the big, bold first showcase to the world of CGI Thomas's potential, this was a good effort. Spencer arrives on Sodor again, and this time to stay a while the Duke and Duchess build their new summer house, much to the engine's dismay.
Having Speedy Spencer on Sodor for one day is bad.
But for the whole summer
is terrible.
During a race with Spencer, Thomas loses control and gets diverted onto an old track, where he discovers the long-lost Hero, an engine that arrived on Sodor during the railway's early years and was forgotten about. Fearing that he'll be scrapped if others see him in his current state, Hero urges Thomas not to tell anyone about him, and Thomas promises he will return Hero to Steam on his own.
I promise I will make you a really useful engine once more. I will make you master of the railway again!
He enlists help from the other engines, and they all work together to mend Hero in secret, without Sir Topham Hatt or the maniacal Spencer catching wind. I have to say, for 2009, the animation quality of this movie is very good. CGI definitely breathed new life into the look of the show, and Nitrogen took advantage of it. The first shot of the movie alone screams, "Here's what's possible in CGI now." Colorful flowers all in the foreground, birds flying by, the camera gracefully panning as Thomas passes. It's all wonderful. I love that they take advantage of the fact that they can place the camera low to the ground now. They can make the engines look huge, get shots of the engines running over the camera, all of which were not possible before. And of course, things like Hero falling apart while in motion, something that totally would not have been possible with a Gauge 1 prop. Hero's flashback too. It's beautifully animated in a 2D style, with pastel-y colors and thick outlines that makes it all look like moving woodblock printings. It's just so nice to look at, and something totally new for the show. But it's not even just that kind of stuff that wasn't possible with models before. Just, in general, I think the animation looks brilliant. So many shots that use perspective blurs, which is something that I don't think they do as much as time went on. I love all the little details, like the smoke fuming out of Thomas's chimney when he's in the forest, or out of Gordon's here when they're all at the docks. The leaves on the foreground plants move ever so slightly in the breeze. Or how about these seagulls way in the background that are so far away that they're blurred and hard to see? Little things like that they didn't have to add because who's going to notice them or care, right? But they added them anyway, just to give the world some life. I'm not so huge on how some of the sets look in CGI. I think Farquhar Quarry in general looks pretty bleak. I don't like how thick the rails are now. That's something that sticks around till the end of the show, and it's always bothered me. And I don't really like how the engines always have this sort of steam haze around them at all times. It's like they're emitting a cloud of mist or something. That just isn't how steam engines work. It looks kind of dumb. But overall, Nitrogen did some good work here. The movie undeniably looks good. I really like Hero. I've always been fond of him. It's great to have a new character that breaks the routine of new characters in the last few seasons. You know, the characters that appear once just for toys and there's not much to them. Contrast to them, Hero actually has a full backstory. He's an older, gentlemanly type. He has a goal and he has desires. He's great. It feels like the crew actually took their time with Hero. I take issue with some of the lore changes to make Hero work in the show's canon, which I will talk about later. But overall, I like Hero a lot. A new character like him really helped fuel the hype of this new era of the show. But my favorite thing about Hero of the Rails, undeniably, is Spencer. I love that a steam engine is the villain of this thing, instead of the more typical evil diesel engine character. I could very easily see someone like Diesel in this role, and I'm glad they decided to go with a less obvious, lesser seen character instead. This movie really revolutionized Spencer, who, prior to this, was a rather tertiary character. We get a lot of material with him here. He transforms over the course of the movie from just a smug jackass into a real maniacal monster.
That engine will be sent to the smelter's yard, where he belongs!
Spencer actually getting to the point of wanting a fellow steam engine scrapped is so revealing of his true character. He got to this point because Thomas ridiculed him. Spencer's kryptonite is his reputation. You mess with that, and he just totally breaks. He didn't care or know who Hero was. He wanted him gone just to hurt Thomas. Seeing a rival hurt is more important to him than the life of a fellow engine. It's way more impacting and interesting for a steam engine to want to see a fellow steam engine scrapped than say if it were a diesel or something, and his downward spiral to getting to that point is so fun to watch unfold. If anything, Hero of the Rails is a great character study about someone's fall from grace, someone with status and prestige, and showing how the smallest things can push that someone over the edge into insanity. I really do just love Spencer in this. He is such a great villain. It's probably his best role ever of the entire show, and it totally changed how I look at him in following seasons. On to the not-so-good stuff. The movie is paced a little too slow for my liking. A good chunk of this movie is just Thomas going back and forth between Hero and his normal life. It gets a bit repetitive around the halfway mark, but the movie does pick up again once that stretch of the movie is over. I fully know by this point the show's continuity was already shaky, and I've talked about this many times before, but it does still bother me how Hero's backstory conflicts with the established history of the show. Hero talks about how he was one of the first engines on Sodor, which totally conflicts with established canon. Even the show itself seemingly ignores this with the introduction of Glynn later on. Now, we've dissected this to death and have covered our theories about it, so I won't go any further into it, but I did just want to mention it. It's very strange how the island's first engine here was an engine whose class was built in the late 1930s. Hero is just far too modern for the type of character he's meant to be. I also take some issue with the overall conflict of the story. Thomas and Hero's big fear is that if Topham finds out about Hero, he'll likely scrap him.
No, please don't do that. You must not tell Sir Topham Hatt. I know what happens to old engines that cannot be really useful. They are scrapped and sent to the smelter's yard.
I find this a little hard to believe. When has Topham ever scrapped an engine before? Whenever any old something is found or brought to him, he's always been about restoring it to its former glory. I totally get why Hero would fear Topham, as he's never met him, but Thomas? I don't know, that seems a little out of character to me, and the other characters too. I can kind of accept it as they're all acting accordingly to what Hero wants and what he fears, but it still seems a little flimsy. Surely a wiser engine like Edward or someone would have soothed over everyone's concerns and got them all seeing straight. Some of those story issues aside, my absolute biggest problem with Hero of the Rails is the amount of needless dialogue from the narrator. He never stops talking.
Thomas felt sorry for his friend. Spencer had followed Thomas. He steamed to a stop. Spencer chuffed on. Spencer reversed back to the junction. He raced after Thomas along the narrow track. Spencer wheeshed steam. It was all too terrible.
Man, shut up already. It's so talky, with the narrator saying way too much unnecessary explanatory dialogue. I feel this is a growing pain thing, where the model series kind of needed a little extra dialogue to explain things because the characters' faces and people didn't move. But that's unnecessary now. We can tell that Thomas feels bad when his expression changes here. We can clearly see that Spencer is chasing after Thomas. I wouldn't ding this so much if it were only a thing in this movie and this season, but I know it's something that plagues the next few seasons. It just makes the show feel like it's talking down to its audience, as if they're blind or don't respect the viewer's intelligence enough to think they'd be able to understand what's going on unless every single little detail is spelled out for them. If this movie had a little more restraint in this regard and used the narrator less, it would be so much more enjoyable. I would love to see an edit of this movie with many of the narrator's lines chopped out. Hell, maybe I'll do it myself one day. Overall, though, Hero of the Rails is pretty solid. It's a solid start to CGI Thomas, and it showed real promise for the show's future in this new medium. This was the show's big opportunity to prove to the world that CGI Thomas has potential, and it did just that. There's a lot to like here. I can't wait to see what the regular episodes are like. Oh my god. What happened? Hero of the Rails showed so much promise. Where did it go? Needless to say, this season just isn't good. Season 13 sucks. It sucks hard. I don't exactly know where to start with this, so I guess I'll start with visual stuff. Hero of the Rails had some really fun direction. Lots of cool shots, perspective blurs, great lighting, etc., etc. Perhaps because they really wanted to push what they could do, to showcase what Thomas and CGI was capable of in its big first production. But sadly, that's not really the case with this season. There is, of course, the occasional nice shots and pretty lighting, and some fun direction here and there. But they're the exception to the majority. The majority of these episodes' runtimes reuse the same angles over and over and over again. All these episodes just look the same. Show me any tracking shot of Thomas going somewhere, and I could not tell you what episode it's from. There's no distinction between episodes. The only episodes that look notably different from the rest are Snow Tracks, because the backdrop is snowy winter, and Splish Splash Splosh, because it's stormy and rainy. But both follow all the same routine direction and story structure as any other episode this season. The other 18 episodes of this 20-episode season are pretty much indistinguishable from each other. Even in scenes when the engines are just talking to each other, they don't play much with the presentation. Every time we cut back to Thomas during his conversation with Cranky, Thomas is always shown from this 3/4 angle. Or like when Victor talks to Thomas here, Victor is always shown from this low angle of him. Whenever there's an establishing shot of the steamworks, it's either from this ground level angle from the right, this overhead shot, or this rear shot from the left. It never really varies from those three. But Tug, I hear you say. The model series did this too. True, you're right, it did. But my point is that the show is CGI now. It should be easier than ever to change the camera position and get new angles. And there aren't as many restrictions as there were with the model set. And even in basic conversation scenes, they would still change up how close the camera was to the character, or change up the angle depending on what the character was supposed to be saying. They knew not to use the same shots over and over again to prevent the scene from becoming dull. And not to mention, the model episodes were shorter, so they were edited with a snappier pace to them. Unlike here, where scenes just drag and drag. This lack of shot variety in these episodes, paired with the awful dialogue, I'll talk about that too, don't worry, make the viewing experience so unengaging. The majority of this season feels very copy and pasted. I know Nitrogen were on a bit of a time crunch with HIT's decision to move into full CGI quickly, so maybe we can partially attribute this lack of visual variety on that. But it's not just the visuals that suffer this year. The stories, too. We often joke about how these Nitrogen seasons all feel like they were written in a single night. And, well, I wouldn't doubt it, frankly. They all use that same tired 3 strikes template. None of them deter from it. If you've seen one episode of Season 13, you have pretty much seen them all, because they're all predictable, they're all forgettable, there's no substance to any of them. They were a real struggle for me to stay awake for, in all honesty. I started dozing off around Percy's parcel or so. Now, I really did not like Season 12 either, but if there's one thing that I can say about that season, is that it was never boring. It was batshit ridiculous most of the time. Contrast that with Season 13, in which all episodes are just the same. I think the very small cast this year also plays a part in why the season felt so repetitive. I get why it's a small cast this year, mind you, but it's just the same characters being used over and over again, especially in the case of Thomas. Thomas is way too overused this season. Over half of the episodes all revolve around him. With the exception of Tickled Pink, the first 9 episodes of this 20-episode season are all Thomas ones, and watching them in order is such a chore. He learns the same exact lesson in several of them. For example, The Lion of Sodor and Thomas and the Pigs are quite literally the same exact plot. Thomas wants to find food to feed an animal, a lion and pigs respectively. He takes on the wrong food at different locations, only to find out that lions nor pigs like those foods. So he undoes his mistake, and then everyone is happy at the end. Whoopee. Boring. They really bank on hoping that the audience has never seen previous episodes, because there are quite a few contradictions. The early bird is a good example of what I mean. In this one, Thomas doesn't know how to pull the mail train, and it's treated as if he has never pulled it before.
Percy's mail run? Have you asked Percy how to do it?
Which is particularly strange because he just pulled it last season, literally 6 episodes ago. A more minor example is Toby says he's never used a steam whistle before.
I've never used a steam whistle before.
Which just isn't true. He did have one in the past.
Toby's bell rang and his whistle sounded, but Champion took no notice.
Again, they're either hoping that you haven't seen previous episodes, or, the more likely case, they wrote these episodes quickly and didn't give a crap if anything made sense. The plots are as ridiculous as ever. Most of these are about an engine delivering a freight car with some sort of load on it, a crate with a lion in it, flowers, books, a freaking trophy case, beehives, bubble liquid, or a present, a literal gift box on a flatbed. Oh, how far we've fallen. And to make these nonsensical plots work, they have to make the characters forgetful and straight up dumb. Totally unaware of their surroundings. I kept rolling my eyes during Toby's new whistle. That's a great example of what I mean here. Look, Thomas is on straight track. He is looking straight ahead, and yet he doesn't see the cow on the tracks until the plot requires him to. Or how there's a giant tree across the main line at the crossing, and no one notices it until the plot needs them to.
There's a fallen tree across the tracks, and Gordon is steaming straight towards it.
Oh no!
Topham, you were literally standing there waiting for them for how long? And you didn't see the giant tree there? Or like this, James hides from Diesel behind trucks, and when Diesel moves them, he doesn't see James? The bright pink engine right there? Is he blind? He only notices him once the plot requires him to. Perhaps this is a got lost in translation from storyboards to final animation thing, but the end result makes the characters just seem so unaware and dumb. Season 13 reminds me of Season 8 in a lot of ways. Both are the first season of a new direction that the show was taken in, with their cast super hyper-focused on its main 8 characters and barely anyone else. I'm not the biggest fan of Season 8 either, but I do think that season had quite a bit more going for it. It's also a snooze fest, but at least they tried to make the plots different from each other. They changed up the settings and the seasons, and the characters weren't totally brain dead then. This is a minor nitpick, and I'm only mentioning it here because there's nowhere else to, but does it bother anyone else how short the trains are this year? Do you know how many times this season a character or characters are depicted holding only one piece of rolling stock? If they're lucky, they might get 2. Gordon got 3 in his episode, wow! Even the Express is only depicted with 2 coaches all season. What's with that? Okay. I have ranted enough now. We all know this season is bad. But is there any good? Why, yes, indeed there is. In a season with so much change, I respect that they still had a little restraint to make this still feel like Thomas. Keeping the narrators for one was a good choice. I feel like having a narrator is an essential part of Thomas's identity. It's a link back to its book roots, and I am glad to see them still being utilized, albeit way too much. They talk too much, and they over-explain everything. It gets grating after a while, but I'm glad they're still there. I love that the intro was recreated one for one. It's still the same intro as before, just now in CGI. I love that all the character models are faithful to the props. Most of them just look exactly like their props did. I'm happy to see that they didn't try to make them look overly realistic or go in the complete other direction and make them look more cartoony. And I appreciate that the episodes are still very slice-of-life-y. We're not at the overly fast-paced, high-energy, shouty cartoon era of CGI yet. I think the episodes do suffer from being way too long. The change to 8.5 minutes really was not necessary, in my opinion, especially for these nothing plots. But my point still stands. I really like the introduction of the steamworks. We've never really gotten a good look at the main works on the railway before. It's always just been a place that's mentioned to exist off-screen. So actually getting to see it and how everything inside works was a great addition. It's pretty cool that it becomes a recurring location moving forward. It appears in about half the episodes this season alone. Giving the works its own designated character was smart too, so now the audience has someone to associate the location with. In the same way that we associate Brendam Docks with Cranky, or the Quarry with Mavis, or like the airfield with Harold, now we have the works with Victor. I feel this season really shines through its subtle visual humor. Every now and then there are these funny little moments that stand out, where the animators do something funny with a character reaction, or just add a background detail. This little awkward stare down between Hiro and Topham is hilarious.
What are you staring at, Hiro?
Nothing, sir. Just your hut, sir.
It's like the only moment all season where there is no stupid dialogue from the narrator that over-explains what's happening, and the humor is derived solely from the characters' expressions and the music. It kind of feels out of place in this season. Alicia Body just emerging out of the coach and singing to random strangers, and then they just stand there awkwardly and listen. I love the looks on their faces. They look totally bewildered at what's happening. Topham covering Alicia with his top hat as if that's going to do anything to shelter her from the water falling down on them. I love how Mr. Bubbles just keeps that pig that they find. Look, he still has it at the show later. Or like right here, Mr. Bubbles is talking to Thomas about whatever. Topham looks at the pig in disgust and he backs away from it. That got a giggle out of me.
I'm sure I can puff to Brendam and back in time for your show.
Very well, Thomas.
Okay, that was cute. That was good. Pig approved. I'm just now noticing that most of these funny moments are all with the human characters. CGI really brought the people in Thomas to life. A brilliant example of how this new medium should be used. There's little character glimmers throughout the season that I would call cute. In Creaky Cranky, Kevin tells Thomas to give Cranky his best.
Give Cranky my best.
There's a lot that you can infer from that one sentence. Kevin has probably never met Cranky, but has heard of him, and as a crane, looks up to him. I love that. And interestingly enough, they would write a whole story around this one line a few seasons later, where Kevin actually gets to meet his hero, Cranky.
The docks? I've always wanted to go there, and I've always wanted to meet Cranky.
I love how Gordon and James just burst out laughing at Thomas when the line of Sodor is revealed. That's very in character for them. I love how Kevin accidentally calls Thomas boss here.
Don't you think so, boss? Thomas?
Which is a neat little bit of continuity from when he was the boss of the Steamworks just a couple episodes earlier.
Are you sure, boss? I mean, Thomas?
In a season where everything is so robotic and forgetful and dumb, these little character moments really shine. The potential for these characters to flourish in CGI is there, but the god-awful writing holds them back greatly. Robert Hartshorn's score saw an overhaul as well. He seemed to take a completely different approach with the music of the CGI series. Before, as was the case also with Mike and Jr.'s work, the score was comprised of different character themes. Each character had a theme, and if they were pivotal to a story, then their theme would probably be the main theme you'd hear in that episode. If there was a runaway, then a runaway track was used. If there was a slow, solemn moment of reflection, then a stock sad theme was used, etc. The approach changed with this season. Gone now are individual character themes, and now each episode has its own sort of main theme, mostly exclusive to it. For example, this is the main theme of Thomas and the Runaway Kite. This is the main theme for Tickled Pink. This is the main theme of Splish Splash Splosh. And this is the main theme for Buzzy Bees. And variations of those themes are used in different ways depending on the mood of the scene. It'll be slower, they'll use different instruments, etc. This isn't always strictly the case for every episode, but that's the biggest change that I've seen, at least in how the music is used. I gotta say though, I do dig this new approach. The music itself is a lot more fun and playful than it was in the hit model seasons, and I find these themes to be a lot catchier. Personally, I prefer the original character themes. I don't think anything really beats those, but this is good too. I don't know if this was a Robert decision to change it up, or if Hit requested a new approach, or just gave them more creative freedom. I don't know, but the end result is good. Robert Hartshorn has proven himself a great composer, and I know his work only gets better as the CGI series goes on. I know this overview section is already running long, but I feel I need to talk about the voice cast, as this is the first time we're hearing a lot of them. There's a lot of them, so I will try to be as brief as possible. Michael Angelis really picks up this season.
Now Thomas didn't dare tell his friends about Hero. The Fat Controller had spoken. No broken engines.
He has a lot more energy in his performance, though it does sound a little forced at times. He was an older man at this point, and he kinda sounds like an old man trying to be energetic. I appreciate his effort regardless though. Michael Brandon is okay. He's alright. I actually think I like Brandon more when he's just the narrator. He does get a little grating though, and I think that's just because they overuse the narrator too much. He's actually not bad when used with restraint. After knowing all of these voices in the later Brenner seasons, it really is kind of surreal going back to the very first time all of them appeared. Some of them are very different to how they sound later, especially in the UK dub. It's fun to hear the evolution. To me, it sounds like Ben Small hadn't totally figured out his voice for Thomas at this point, at least in Hero of the Rails. It's very soft sounding at some points, compared to the more high-pitched that it is later on.
I will meet Spencer at dawn, and I will win.
He still gives a good performance though, especially in the action scenes.
Spencer, you can do it, Hero!
Matt Wilkinson's voice for Kevin is also a lot deeper. It's not as annoying as it is later on.
Yes, boss. Sorry, boss. I was trying, boss. Just to slip in me hook.
William Hope's Edward and Toby voices in the US dub aren't as whiny, and they overall sound a little deeper, especially Toby here.
Hello, Thomas. You look happy. What's your special?
And I totally forgot that Michael Brandon voiced Diesel.
What are you doing, James? You're a big pig steamy.
I am so used to Carrie Shale as Diesel that hearing this was total whiplash. Martin Sherman is, in my opinion, a decent Thomas. I think he fits the character age-wise. Thomas sounds like a teenager or young adult with him, which suits him. Like Ben Small, I don't think he's fully settled into the role yet. A lot of his lines come off a bit robotic.
I promised to take extra special care of my lion.
I'm sorry, sir. I've lost them.
Though, to be fair, it's a challenge to make the clunky dialogue this season actually sound natural. He's a fine Thomas. I think he gets too much hate personally. Carrie Shale as Topham is frankly hilarious. I think the voice fits the character fine, but his delivery is so serious. I get that he's trying to make him imposing, but it's sometimes a little too much.
The building materials for the summer house are stacked up at the docks, and you're not working on your branch line. What is going on? Then you had better go and find them!
And the end result is just really funny. He really shines as Loam Hat, though. I love the way he delivers his lines.
Have you been up to your old tricks again? Absolutely right, Topham. I've been having a wonderful time with Thomas.
Keith Wickham is the definitive Topham, though, at least in my opinion.
But, sir, I'm not ready.
You're quite ready enough, James. Leave right away.
And he eventually takes over the role for both dubs later on. His voices for the other characters sound a little samey to me. Percy and James sound kinda similar, as do Topham and Gordon. But hey, we know in time it gets better. Going back to Carrie Shale, he is a great voice actor, honestly, with so much range. He voices a lot of characters, and they all sound so different from each other. We don't hear much of his Diesel this year. The guy only has one line.
What are you doing, James? You're a big pig steamy!
But he pretty much becomes the definitive Diesel voice as time goes on. I love his Gordon voice. It's so powerful and confident.
Now I must hurry. The express mustn't be late.
Well done, Gordon!
Thank you, Thomas!
I think his James is pretty good. And his Henry...
Bubbling boilers! That's a funny funnel!
At least I can give that bird a rest and a ride.
I mean, I like it more than Keith Wickham's Henry, but it's not at all what I pictured Henry sounding like before this. But I'll admit, it's kind of grown on me though, not gonna lie. Teresa Gallagher and Jules DeYoung voice all the female characters in their respective dubs. I really love Teresa's voice for Emily. She's consistently still Scottish, as she was in the model series. It's a perfect voice for her.
You're a big, strong engine, Spencer. Why don't you go and look?
Jules' Emily isn't bad either.
You're a big, strong engine, Spencer. Why don't you go and look?
She makes her sound a little too young for my liking, but like Henry, it's a voice that's grown on me over time. Glenn Rage just might be my favorite of the VAs this season. He is a fantastic Spencer, and his cranky voice is my personal favorite for the character.
Hardy smarty. I don't go to parties. I'm stuck here loading and unloading all day.
He makes him sound so indifferent and sarcastic. I love it. The robotic writing of the season doesn't really allow the voice actors to really show off their skills, and it doesn't really give them all that much to work with. Spencer, however, got to be a malicious villain in Hero of the Rails, which is why I think Glenn Rage won my pick this year. He had an opportunity to make Spencer come off as quite threatening.
Very well, Thomas. Meet me tomorrow at dawn at the shunting yards. I won't let Thomas get away with this. Because that's the only thing that this engine's good for. Sir Topham Hatt will make sure of that.
Togo Egawa as Hero is so great. I think he stands out because he isn't putting on a voice for the character. It's pretty much just his normal speaking voice.
You did everything you could, Thomas. But I know now, I will be sent to the smelter's yard.
It makes Hero sound so genuine and so special compared to the rest of the characters. I cannot picture Hero at all without Togo's voice. David Badella as Victor is great too. A very warm, nurturing voice.
Slowly, slowly, gently, gently.
Perfect for what is essentially the doctor character of the show. Matt Wilkinson as Victor is just terrible.
You've come to the right place, my friend. Butts aplenty here. We'll have cranking up and lifting in no time.
I'm sorry, but that accent is just not convincing. It sounds so fake. It's the only voice of the entire cast this year that I flat out don't like. I don't get why they had two voice actors for Victor to begin with. Togo voices Hero in both dubs. Why not have David in both too? Clearly they realized that Wilkinson as Victor was a mistake, because Badella took over the role for both dubs later in Blue Mountain Mystery. That was a good move on their part. I'm glad they did that. Matt Wilkinson is by no means a bad voice actor though. He also does a great job as Spencer, and I prefer his younger kid-like take on Charlie over Glenn's.
Hello, are you Thomas?
Yes, I am.
I'm Charlie. I've heard a lot about you.
Okay, I think I covered everyone. That was a lot. Overall, they got a pretty solid cast for the characters this year. It will be fun watching it grow as the seasons go on. Let's start this section with the positive ones, because frankly this won't take long. I think the standout this year is a pretty easy pick. I think this is the one that everyone agrees is the good episode from this season. Tickled Pink. In this one, James gets a new coat of paint. Really breaking new ground there. But midway through, he gets called out on an emergency when Emily breaks down, while still in his pink undercoat. It was nice to see an episode about James that did something new with him for once. A story showing that rarely seen insecure side of him. Such a breath of fresh air to see this side again instead of the braggy, vain, impatient version of James that we're more used to. It's also pretty cool that the plot revolves around something actually train-related that they've never shown on screen before. Engines getting undercoats before their final paint job is applied.
Then they applied a special pink paint. The pink paint was to go under the new red coat. It was to keep the water out.
That's cool. I actually learned what an undercoat was from this episode when it first came out. This is so much more interesting than Thomas screwing around with bubbles or kites or whatever. It's still a pretty bland episode, all things considered. It's very repetitive and predictable, like all of these are, but I think it sticks with most people just for its unique concept alone. As for my favorites, okay, I already know this is going to be a hot take opinion. I don't think a single person would also choose this one, but the episode I actually enjoyed the most on this rewatch was Playtime. I know, a weird pick, right? Now, it's not amazing or anything, but it's a pretty funny episode with all of Alicia Bottie's antics. I love how she just announces herself wherever they go.
Who is your friend, Thomas?
Charlie. He's new.
I'm fun!
And I'm Alicia Botti.
And she isn't concerned with being late to her concert at all. It's funny, she's a fun character, what can I say? This is one of the only Thomas episodes this season that I didn't dislike Thomas in. I actually like his arc here. It's not him being oblivious and stupid and selfish like he is in all the others. No, it's about him dealing with the dangers of giving into peer pressure. Appropriate for a younger character like him, and an actual good lesson for kids.
I heard you were a fun engine. Maybe you're not fun at all.
Charlie is used fairly well as the instigator, a new character that we're not supposed to like. He's supposed to be a bad influence, which is a nice change from the typically disposable new characters that are all friendly happy with no personality to them. The fact Annie and Clarabelle are mute in this is so weird though. They showed Annie seeing the coupling detach, and yet she didn't yell out to Thomas to slow down. Why'd they even draw attention to her if they weren't going to make her and Clarabelle active participants in the story? I also didn't hate Creaky Cranky, simply because I like Cranky, and it was nice to see him get some time in the spotlight again. It's been a while since he was a main character in a story. Hero Helps Out is worth a shout too for the same reason, for actually allowing the spotlight fully to be on a character that isn't a main cast member. Hero is just so likable that he's able to charm his way through a boring episode like this one and make it somewhat interesting. It's still boring though. I mean, nothing really happens in this one. I think many episodes could fit the bill for the sum up this year, because let's be real, they're pretty much all the same. But I think I'm going to choose Steamy Sodor. This is a very season 13 type of episode. Another Thomas-centric story taking place at the big new location this year, featuring 2 of the new characters. The plot is your standard 3 strikes plots, and once again, the engines are shown as if they're the ones in charge instead of the humans. It's a ridiculous plot, really. Thomas is left in charge of the steamworks and makes all the decisions. It's dumb. But it sort of makes up for it with funny visuals. Things like Spencer getting that coal mustache. Again, it's a nice little glimmer of that subtle humor throughout this season. It is not a good episode by any means, but I think it encapsulates what to expect from Season 13. How you respond to this one is probably a good indicator of how much you would like the rest of the season. And the worst episode of Season 13 is... well, it's time for a story, but no way in hell am I wasting my time reviewing this. But I know just the person who can.
Hello?
Yo, Trampy, it's me, Tug. Oh.
What the hell do you want?
Trampy, it's me, Tug.
Yeah, I know it's you. That's why I hung up.
Yeah, so I need you to watch and review an episode for the Season 13 retrospective. You know, just like you did last time?
Oh, how could I forget? How could I forget? Yeah, it's not like doing that almost made me leave the frickin' planet last time!
Oh, come on, man. It wasn't that bad.
Brother, I almost left the Earth. What the hell do you mean it was not that bad?
Well, okay. But everyone loved it.
Oh, everyone loved it? Oh.
Yeah, they did.
I guess that's all that matters, is it? Yeah, everyone loved it. Yeah, everyone. Yeah, you think I loved that?
Well...
you know what I got from that?
What?
Nothing. I watched your stupid train slop for nothing. Instead, I got to spend 46 days in a hospital bed. I got to spend 2 of those weeks
hooked up to life support. I had to eat food through a goddamn tube. And after that, I got to spend 2 hours waiting in the pharmacy line at Walgreens! Come on, man. Work with me here. It's just one episode, 9 minutes of your life. All right, look. If I come back and review this stupid train poop, what do I get out of it? Money. Oh, okay.
All right, let's get this show started now. This episode ain't gonna review itself. Wait, what episode am I reviewing again? Oh, thank you. Time for a story. Yeah, more like time for a snooze. So this episode starts off with the narrator telling me that Sodaware is just having a good old day today. It's having a beautiful day. You know, the bees are chirping and the birds are buzzing. A perfect day for Thomas to f*** things up. So Sir Top-O-Mat gathers a bunch of his engines up and he's like, there's gonna be a special story time for the kids at the library today. But for some reason, that library ain't got no books, so I need an engine to bring the books to the library. And I just love how immediately he's just like, Thomas, you're gonna do it. Like, all right, damn, what if Edward wanted to take it? Look how happy he was. But I guess Edward's feelings don't matter because listening to stories with the children is Thomas's favorite thing to do.
Listening to stories with the children was his favorite thing to do.
I don't know what he meant by this. So Thomas goes to a station and the books are already there, all loaded and ready to go. And Thomas is like, I'm here to collect the books. But then the guy is like, yeah, we'll get those books ready for you in no time, Thomas. And I'm like, they're already there. They're ready. What do you mean? But then we cut to this shot. Now you might notice that the books are not on the line they were just on. That means, for some reason, this guy made Thomas go to the other line, get the books, and move them to his line he was already on, and start the journey from there. Like, why didn't he just make Thomas go to the other line, get the books, and just start from there? Why did he make him go back to the other line? It's a really bad sign that this is what gets me started. But uh-oh, Thomas leaves before the books have a chance to be covered? I thought they were ready! No, whatever happens is not Thomas's fault. Why were you just standing there doing nothing when he pulled up? You had so much time to do this shit beforehand. You moron! So thanks to this doormat, Thomas is now traveling with the books going all crazy and shaking behind him. But uh-oh, there's a red signal up ahead and Thomas is like, I ain't stopping for that. So he runs it and goes down the branch line because he knows there's no red signals down there. Yeah, Thomas, I don't know about that one. So Thomas goes down the branch line and it's going okay for a bit. But uh-oh, he comes across a construction sign, which means that the tracks are under repair. And Thomas is like, I ain't stopping for that. So he keeps going. He does not stop. And it's not like he doesn't know what's happening. He literally says out loud, oh, those bumpy tracks won't stop me. Out of the way, workmen that are working on this bumpy track. I got books to deliver. Oh, God, the bumpy tracks are stopping me. Oh, no. Oh, geez, oh, my. Oh, not the books. Not the books. No! What did you think was gonna happen? You ran a red signal. You ran past a construction sign. You ran past a whole mile of tracks that are being worked on, almost killing these men that are just doing their job. And just now you're like, oh man, I should have stopped for that shit. Hey Thomas, boo f***ing who? You were well aware of what you were doing. I heard it from your tiny ass mouth. And you expect me to feel sorry for you? No! So after Thomas is done moping and doping, he looks at the books all scattered in the field and he's like, wait a minute, I kinda cooked here. And then he's like, hey driver, this kinda goes heavy. Let's go get the kids. So he goes to this big ass library, goddamn that's big, and he picks up 5 kids. Yeah, this huge story time event that was built up the entire episode has 5 kids and a teacher. I just want to remind you guys that if Thomas wasn't there in the opening scene, there's a chance that Sir Top-O-Mat would have asked Gordon to do this. So Thomas takes the 5 kids away, and I love how they added this bit where Thomas actually stops at the signal. And the narrator is like, this time Thomas did not run a red light. So he takes the kids to the wreckage and he's like, you kids can have your special story time here. Oh yeah, Thomas, I would much rather read books in the dirt and getting bit by ants instead of this nice, cozy library. You very, very smart person. But it's okay because the kids love it, and so does the teacher? Okay, look, with the kids I get, okay? If I was a dumb 5-year-old and Thomas the Tank Engine told me, hey kid, go lick the inside of that dumpster. Don't ask why. I would do it. I would do it. But why the hell is the teacher okay with this? It's a grown-ass woman. She's okay with sitting in this ant-infested field? Hey, you know what? Now that I think about it, what has Thomas's driver and fireman been doing all this time? Yeah, they've been there the whole time. When Thomas ran that red light, when he ran past that construction sign, when he almost killed these bunch of workmen, yeah, they were here for all of that. They let this shit just happen. Are these dudes smoking in there? Are they paying rent in there? Like, control your dog. You are terrible people, all of you. You are endangering these kids by getting bit by ants and ticks in the grass. You two don't control your train and just let him do what the hell he wants. Run it back to this guy who didn't put the tarp on the books until after Thomas left. And don't even get me started on Thomas, who should be setting an example for the 2-year-olds watching. But above all else, everything that happened in this episode is because of this fat, obese Weight Watcher sponsor, roly-poly fat Sir Topham Hat for making his trains do a very specific non-train related task that could have easily been done by road. You caused this. You made this happen, you
Chappie, what are you doing in there?
Crap. Hey, sir, I'm just, I'm just recording something for a silly video.
You're not in there, bad-mouthing me on my railway, are you?
What? No, me? No, I would never do that to you, sir. Come on now, don't be silly.
What was all that yelling I heard? I could hear you all the way from my office.
Oh, no, you, I was just, reviewing something.
Well, what the hell were you reviewing?
I was reviewing a season 13 episode.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that season's terrible.
I know!
Why are you reviewing that?
I don't know! This isn't even my channel. What are you doing here? Get out! Go away! Go!
Oh, well, damn, all right. Calm down.
Leave! Go on!
I will.
Go!
I'm going.
Now!
Right now, I'm going. I'm going right now. I'm going. I'm going away now. I'm away now. I'm going away. Okay, I'm away.
Dude, I can still see your feet under the door. You're not fooling anybody.
No, you don't.
I do. You have huge hippo feet. I can see them clear as day.
They aren't that big.
Brother, they're humongous.
Oh, goddamn, they are.
Would you get out of here? Go now.
All right, I'm going now. Bye-bye.
Sorry about that, guys. My dad barged in. Anyway, how much longer we have in this episode? Oh, it's over. Huh, it's over. Well, I'm out of here. Bye-bye.
I don't really see a point in doing the ranking this year because it's so uninteresting. Thomas has the most episodes by a wide margin at 13, while everyone else who did get a lead this year got 1. 1 each. If you count the Early Bird also as a Percy episode, then that gives Percy 2. And if you count Buzzy Bees also as a hero episode, then that gives him 2. But at that point, I feel like I'm just splitting hairs. Thomas is the winner. Big shock, I know. Thomas is probably the dumbest he has ever been in a season of the show so far. All his episodes are the same. He learns the same lessons over and over. I get so sick of seeing him. There is one redeeming aspect about him this year though, and that is his newfound friendship with Hiro. Thomas totally respects Hiro, like a grandfather type. He's so fascinated by him, always asking him questions, curious about his past life.
Where is your island? Hiro, what do you think about when you're alone?
And he goes out of his way to make Hiro happy, even when he doesn't need to, such as when he searches Sodor for a welcome present for him. I don't particularly like Thomas this year, but I do think the friendship between him and Hiro is very sweet. I have to say, the rest of the main cast this year wasn't too bad. Everyone was pretty in character for the most part. Henry's gentle, nature-loving side had some light shown on it. Gordon was, of course, super self-confident and kind of a jerk, but also acted like a big brother to Thomas on a couple occasions.
Thomas is not a toy.
I love it when that side of him comes out. I never like it when Gordon is just always pompous and grumpy all the time. We saw James's insecure side come out, Emily's know-it-all personality was up front. All pretty good stuff, really. They all feel like their true selves for the most part, just with their intelligence dialed down quite a few notches. I'd like to shout out Edward in particular. Despite him not having a spotlight role this year, this is the most true Edward has felt in a long time. Perhaps the fact he didn't get a spotlight episode this year helped with that. Whenever he appears, he's usually pretty wise or observant.
In all my long years, I've never seen that before. Sir Topham Hatt never plays hide and seek.
I know.
And what's that on his face?
A mustache. It just appeared.
Or he calls others out.
Slow down, Speedy!
Edward in general fared really well in the CGI series. I am so happy to see that his old and feeble era is behind us now. Other than Thomas, Toby is the other one of the mains that I feel has totally fallen off. We are well and truly in the pathetic Toby era, which spans for pretty much the rest of the show at this point. He has no self-confidence, he's just always sad and mopey and complaining. He's just a real wet blanket of a character.
Come on, give me a smile, just to show me you can.
Victor is a real delight. Another new character that actually brought something fresh to the show. I spoke of earlier how I like the Steamworks a lot in general, and I think establishing a character that works there was a great idea. Not only does it help the audience remember the location, but there is some real-life precedent to it. Big engine works usually did have small narrow-gauge engines that worked in them to haul heavy supplies and machinery around. Victor is essentially the engine's doctor, so he's a rather gentle sort. Very calm and understanding, but also stern and to the point.
Do you have a job to do, Spencer? Or are you just going to stand here gossiping? You're taking up a lot of track.
Exactly what you'd want in a doctor type. His patience is really emphasized with how he treats Kevin. Kevin is like the most annoying, clumsy, Jar Jar Binks-esque character ever in Thomas. But that's kind of a good thing here, because it shows how clear-minded Victor is in comparison. If Victor can spend all day with Jar Jar Binks and still not take his frustrations out on the others, then that is a clear sign that he is very level-headed. I like Victor and Kevin. They're a good duo that contrast each other pretty well. Charlie is another new face, and he's whatever. I don't like him, nor do I dislike him. He served his purpose as a bad influence in Playtime, which was good. But beyond that, he really doesn't do much besides exist. I think there's apt reason to suspect that Charlie was originally meant to be Billy. A model of Billy was built for the CGI tests of Don't Be Silly Billy, although we've never seen it. And an early script of Splish Splash Splosh apparently had him in it instead of Charlie. I wonder why they decided to make a new character instead. I mean, the answer is usually always for toys, because a new character with a new paint job probably sells quite a bit better than a reissue of an existing one. Guess I answered my own question there. Cranky and Spencer both got some love this year, especially Spencer, and it was a delight to see both of them again. Mavis also appeared a good bunch this season, probably the most she's ever been in one season. I have no doubt that this is simply because they were strapped for characters this year, so they just used whatever Nitrogen built. But hey, you know what? That's fine. I'm happy to see more of her. Her character seems to have been rewritten slightly. She's now a very mature type, almost like a teacher, being patient and guiding others.
Don't worry, Percy. I'm sure Sir Topham Hatt will come back with a special just for you. And when he does, be sure to tell me all about it.
Very different from the impatient, feisty Mavis that we used to know so many years ago. Thanks to CGI quite literally bringing him to life, Sir Topham Hatt feels a lot more like an actual character in the CGI series. The fact he can move now helps with that a lot. They can put him in more varied situations and have him react to things in real time now. The pig moment I mentioned earlier is a fantastic example of that. I feel they've struck a good balance here between the humorous side of Topham and his serious side. Now I love me some funny Topham moments, but the funny side gets pushed a bit too much in later seasons in my opinion, to the point where Topham just comes off as a complete joke.
Just hold tight for a little longer, Percy.
Haha, funny, cause fat guy fall down. Don't get me wrong, it works sometimes, but I find these earlier seasons where the humor with him is more subtle like this to be more tasteful. I like this version of Topham. Weirdly though, many human characters start referring to him as Bertram.
Not at all, Bertram.
Oh, my
Bertram, what a wonderful surprise!
As if that's his first name and not Topham. But then Loam calls him Topham.
Absolutely right, Topham.
So I don't know. I don't know where Bertram came from. I don't know what the thought process was behind this. I guess the writers thought that Topham is his middle name? I'm pretty sure that they retcon this later on though.
Topham, don't even think about leaving without your hat!
So, I don't really know what the point of calling him Bertram at all was. As for the season's MVP award, well, I think Hero rightfully deserves it this time. He has a whole story arc in the movie that seeps into the season. He's one of the few instances of solid continuity this year. Now, I've already done a whole Sodor's Finest on Hero. You all know I'm a pretty big fan of him. Hero is different from other older characters. He's very aware of everything around him, and he picks up on little things about the others.
When Gordon smiles, it changes his whole face. It is most interesting.
And he has a great sense of humor.
And tomorrow, I think James is coming.
James isn't wise at all.
He's such a delight. A really grand character. I really don't like how quickly they brought Hero back to Sodor in the season. They made such a big deal about him going back home and missing his friends there, that him coming back at all so soon just sort of undermines that. In my opinion, Hero shouldn't have appeared in the show for a few seasons, to give us time to miss him, and then brought him back in like season 16 or something. And only then he would become a recurring character. Bringing him back so quickly really undercut that emotional ending of Hero of the Rails. The word that I would use to describe season 13 is, well, disappointing. It's not disappointing in the sense that it looks awful and everything is bad. No, it's disappointing because there is so much potential shown here. Hero of the Rails was such a solid start to this era, and the animation and the voice cast and the music, everything is great. Every aspect of this show was firing on all cylinders, except for what is arguably the most important part, the writing. The god-awful writing of these episodes kills all momentum and goodwill, and that is such a shame. Season 13. What a mixed bag. It's not the best start to CGI Thomas, but at least there were some bright spots. My recommendation is to honestly just go watch Hero of the Rails and just skip the season. Nothing of note happens in it. The only thing you need to know is that Hero does come back to Sodor. That's really the only major status quo change. Just watch the movie and save yourself the time. Watching this season was a chore, but maybe it will get better from here. Now that they've had a season to find their footing, maybe next year will be a little better. Oh no. Oh no. No, 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 no! Keeping on topic again, I'd like to spotlight why Thomas's CGI transition worked and then it didn't, by Caleb Train. An excellent summary of Thomas's history in the world of CGI. He very succinctly puts it all into words why Thomas's transition from model to CGI worked really well at first, and continued to improve as time went on and other production companies got involved. And then how it all kind of fell apart as the show tried to become more cartoony and animated. It's a very informative video. I share all the same feelings as him here, and he puts them all into words much better than I could have. This was quite the retrospective, wasn't it? I did not expect it to be as long as it was, but there was just so much to cover and talk about with all the changes this year. I do not anticipate the seasons 14, 15, or even 16 videos to be this long, but I'm sure I'll find something to say. I want to give a big thank you to Trampy once again for taking part in this, and for his very entertaining review of an episode that no one on planet Earth remembers. Always love working with you, Kyle. Your improv and voice acting skills are unmatched. Check out his channel and his videos. If you liked what you saw here, then you'll probably love his other stuff. Links below. And I also want to give a big thank you to D. Shaney from my Patreon, a fellow 3D animator who provided me a ton of insight on how the CGI Thomas models were rigged and worked. He provided all the footage of the Thomas model in Maya used in the history section. He has a channel as well with a ton of his own animations, so go check him out. Links to his channel, Twitter, and Instagram are all below. I don't have much of an update for you on what's coming next. At the time of recording this, I have not started the next video. But since we have both a major Sodor's Finest and a retrospective in the same month, I think it's safe to say that I'll be working on something a little different next. What that is exactly, I'm not too sure at the moment, but I have some ideas. Hope you all are staying warm this winter. Be safe out there. I'll see you all in the next one, folks. Bye-bye.